The waves whispered his name every morning. James. For 5 years, Emma Lewis had lived with the sound of the same ocean that took her husband away. She still wore her wedding ring, a small silver band that had dulled over time, but she could never bring herself to take it off. The townspeople called her the widow by the sea. They pitied her, admired her strength, and whispered behind her back about how she still spoke to his photograph before bed. Every evening, she walked barefoot along the shore, tracing the same path they once walked together. The horizon always looked the same, endless, empty, cruelly calm. And yet, in her heart, she still felt him, as if somewhere, somehow he wasn't really gone. But she shook the thought away. Hope had betrayed her once. She wouldn't let it again. Emma's bookshop, Seaglass Books, was her sanctuary. It smelled of old paper, rain-soaked wood, and the faint salt of the sea air. Every story on its shelves was a life she could step into, one where love didn't end with tragedy. One morning, as she arranged a stack of romance novels, a familiar voice broke her thoughts. "Morning, Emma." It was Daniel Hale, the kind widower who had become her closest friend. He always brought her coffee, always asked how she was, and never pushed past her silences. He placed a steaming cup on the counter. "You look tired. Long night again." She smiled faintly. "The sea was loud." "Or maybe your thoughts were," he said gently. Their eyes met, a quiet warmth, a comfort that neither dared to name. Emma wasn't ready to love again, but Daniel made her remember what it felt like to breathe. Outside, the sky darkened. The waves began to rise, as if the ocean itself was stirring with a secret it could no longer keep. That night, the rain came like a warning. Thunder rolled over the coast as Emma rushed to close the bookshop. Lightning flashed across the windows, and through the blur of rain, she saw a shadow outside. A man, drenched, staggering toward the door. She hesitated. Then, instinctively, she opened it. "Sir, are you all right?" The man lifted his head. His face was gaunt, bearded, scarred. But his eyes, her breath caught, those eyes, blue-gray, like the sea before a storm. He whispered, voice trembling, "Emma." Her heart stopped. The room spun. The cup in her hand shattered against the floor. "James?" she whispered. He stepped forward, tears mingling with the rain. "It's me. I came home." The rain hadn't stopped. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the ghost of the man she'd buried in her heart 5 years ago. James. Every heartbeat echoed his name. He was thinner, older, a map of pain drawn across his face, but his eyes still held that same warmth she used to wake up to every morning. "I thought you were dead," she breathed. He gave a faint, broken smile. "So did I." Emma couldn't speak. Her tears came before her words did. She reached out a trembling hand, afraid he might disappear like smoke. But when her fingers brushed his skin, it was real, warm, alive. James pulled her into his arms, and for a moment, the years vanished. The grief, the loneliness, the quiet nights by the sea, all gone. But behind that embrace lay questions that could shatter everything. They sat by the fireplace, wrapped in silence except for the rain outside. "I was on that ship," James began, his voice rough. "We hit the storm, and I was thrown overboard. I don't remember much after that. Just darkness. And then, waking up on a fishing boat somewhere near a small island off the coast of Norway." Emma listened, tears glistening in the firelight. "They said they found me barely breathing. I had a head injury, lost my memory for months. When I finally remembered who I was, I tried to come home. But by the time I reached England, the world had moved on. You had." He stopped, voice breaking. "You had buried me." Emma's heart ached. "I waited, James. For years, I waited. But they said no one survived." He nodded slowly, guilt in his eyes. "I don't blame you." But when he looked around, the changed house, the books, the new photographs, something in his expression shifted. There was one picture in particular, of Emma and Daniel at the bookshop's opening, smiling together. James said nothing, but the question lingered in the silence between them. The next morning, Emma walked down the hill toward the cafe. Daniel was there, waiting like he always did. The moment he saw her, he smiled. But that smile faded when he saw the look in her eyes. "Emma, what's wrong?" Her voice trembled. "He's alive." Daniel froze. "Who?" "James." The name hung in the air like thunder. Daniel's hands tightened around his cup, his voice barely a whisper. "Your husband?" She nodded, tears spilling over. "He came back last night." For a long time, Daniel said nothing. Then he exhaled softly. "I always knew," he said quietly, "that a part of you still belonged to him." Emma tried to speak, but he stopped her gently. "You don't need to explain. You loved him once. Maybe you still do. But just remember, you're allowed to live too." His words broke her, because for the first time in years, she realized that the heart doesn't just break once. It keeps breaking in quieter, deeper ways. As she walked back home, the sea wind howled in her ears, as if the ocean itself was demand. Days passed, but the air in Emma's cottage never felt still. James was there, alive, breathing, but distant. Sometimes she'd find him staring at the sea through the window, as if afraid it might take him again. Other times, she'd catch him flinching at small things, the kettle whistling, the slamming of a door, fragments of a trauma that still haunted him. One evening, she placed dinner on the table. James barely touched it. "You're quiet," she said softly. He gave a faint smile. "I don't know this world anymore, Emma. Everything's changed." He glanced at the bookshelf, new titles, new colors, and then at the photograph of Emma and Daniel. His eyes darkened. "Who is he?" he asked. Her breath caught. "Daniel's a friend. Just a friend." The silence that followed said more than words ever could. James looked away. "I died once, Emma. But maybe I came back too late." That night, Emma walked alone to the beach, the same one she'd visited every year on the anniversary of his death. The wind was cold, sharp, and the tide was rising. She looked out at the endless black water. "This sea took you from me," she whispered, "and now it's trying to take my peace." Behind her, footsteps approached. It was Daniel. "I thought I'd find you here," he said softly, standing beside her. "I don't know what to do, Daniel." Her voice broke. "He's alive, but everything between us feels different. He's a stranger now, and yet, he's the man I once would have died for." Daniel's expression was calm, but his voice trembled. "You don't owe anyone your past, Emma. Not even him. You've been living in grief for 5 years. Maybe it's time to start living in the present." Emma turned to him, tears in her eyes. "You make it sound so easy." He smiled sadly. "It isn't, but love never is." The waves crashed, a fierce and final sound between them. And in that moment, she realized. The sea that once took her husband now stood between two men who both loved her differently. When Emma returned home, she found James sitting by the fire, holding something. A worn leather notebook. He looked up. "This was yours," he said. "You used to write letters to me after I died. I found them in your drawer." Emma froze. She had forgotten about them. Pages of unsent words, confessions, and goodbyes. James opened one and read aloud, voice breaking. "If love could bring you back, you'd be here by now. But maybe love's greatest act is learning to let go." He set the letter down, tears glinting in the firelight. "You let me go once, Emma, and I think maybe I need to let you go now." Her heart shattered. "Don't say that. I came back hoping to find us," he whispered. "But maybe what we had belongs to another time." He stood, kissed her forehead, and added quietly, "You gave me peace when I was lost. Now I need to give you the same." And with that, James walked out into the night, toward the sea, the storm, and whatever waited beyond the horizon. The storm lasted until morning. Emma didn't sleep. She sat by the window, eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting, hoping, dreading. When the first light of dawn broke through, she ran to the cliffs overlooking the sea. The sky was pale gold, the waves calm again. But there was no sign of James. Only his wedding ring, lying on the sand, half buried, glinting in the sunlight. She picked it up, trembling. Inside the band, words were engraved in tiny script. Forever isn't about time. It's about love that never leaves. Emma sank to her knees, clutching the ring to her heart. She knew then he hadn't drowned this time. He had chosen to let go, to set her free. Weeks passed. The sea calmed. Life began again. Quietly, like spring returning after a long winter. Emma started writing again, not to the dead, but to the living. Each morning, she wrote a letter to herself, sealing it in a small box at the bookshop's counter. They began with simple words. Dear Emma, you're still here. Daniel visited often. He didn't speak of love, not at first. He simply helped her stack books, mend shelves, and fix the small things James once did. One day, as they were closing up, Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man who waited, but the man who stayed. Daniel, she said quietly, thank you for not giving up on me. He smiled softly. You don't thank people for loving you, Emma. You just let them. For the first time in years, she smiled, a real unbroken smile. Months later, Emma stood by the sea again. The waves danced against her feet, gentle now, like a friend instead of a thief. She opened her hand. In her palm lay 2 rings, hers and James's. She whispered into the wind, thank you for loving me enough to leave. Then she dropped both rings into the tide. The ocean carried them away, not as symbols of loss, but of peace. As she turned back toward the cliffs, she saw Daniel waiting at the top of the path, smiling in the golden light. And for the first time, Emma didn't feel haunted by what she'd lost. She felt grateful for what she had found, a love that didn't replace the past, but honored it. She took Daniel's hand, and together they walked away from the sea. Some loves return to us so we can say goodbye, and some stay, quietly, to remind us that even after death, the heart still remembers how to live. The end. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share to others. Also leave a comment to share your thought about the story.